Welcome to another episode of the All Tens Podcast. I'm your co-host, Josh West. With me, as always, Clay Harrison. Today, Clay, we're continuing our series on lessons from the session. And today, we wanted to focus specifically on the accountability chart. What do you got?
Accountability chart. You know, we talk about accountability chart a lot, Josh, and that's great. But I just realized I didn't put my headphones on, so I'm just going to leave this in the edit because this is real life, people. Real life. Got to make sure we don't have that echo. You know what I'm saying?
I hear it.
So the thing that, when it comes to accountability chart, that I want to make sure that we're always thinking about is that we say it all the time. However, I'm not sure we're good at coming back to it as often as we should.
This episode of the All Tens Podcast is powered by Stretty, the EOS software people love. With EOS Pure Tools, plus additional collaboration and communication tools, you can run on EOS and execute on daily work all in one place. Learn more at Stretty.com. That's STRETY.com.
And so, you know, we've talked about Focus Day, how on Focus Day we set accountability chart, and we spent a lot of time on that. And then the way that we kind of get around accountability chart is in almost every session, not get around, the way that we address accountability charts, we talk about right people, right seat issues.
Mm-hmm.
And what's the perspective from which we're talking about right people, right seat issues, Josh? People. It's
Indeed.
Almost always people. And so the thing that's on my mind, and the reason that I was like, oh, I want to talk about this on the pod with Josh, is because like I think we need to think about accountability chart a little bit more often in the balance of thinking about people versus seat. They're both it's right people and right seat. And I think I'll shut up in a second because I'm just saying the same thing in different ways over and over again. But I think that when we start thinking about people issues, we mainly think about people and whether or not they GWC the seat. And I want our listeners, I don't know why I'm preaching this morning, but I want our listeners to also consider that the accountability chart might be wrong. We say it often that the accountability chart is in wet cement. We should change it when it needs to be changed. And my experience is that when people think about right people, right seat, they aren't thinking about, oh shit, maybe the accountability chart is wrong. They're just approaching it from a people perspective. End rant.
Got it. Lot to unpack there. I'm going to come back to something you said. Let's make sure that we get some things clear here. And you said, I don't feel that we come back to it often enough. In your experience with clients, how often are they revisiting the accountability chart?
Well, Josh, maybe this is just all my fault, and that's fine. It's 100% on me as an implementer to do it. But like, I feel like we talk about right people, right seat issues in every session. But that those right people, right seat issues almost always are from a perspective of, is a person a core values fit, which is what right person is, or is there or do they not GWC their seat? You know, it's a very people-centric thing. Mm-hmm. So we're kind of talking about it, but kind of not. I mean, so there's that. But then the other part is like when we're making big changes and we know the accountability chart has to change, like we do that like as a rock or whatever, like that shows up in the big ways. What I'm talking about is that in between. Like sometimes there might not be some huge change happening in the business, but still the accountability chart needs a tweak. That's what I'm getting at. You know what I'm saying?
Okay, I'm hearing several things in there. One, and particularly for our clients that are well on their journey and I'll say advanced in running on EOS, the quarterly conversations offer the opportunity for them certainly to come back and look very clearly at the accountability chart, refresh themselves on that seat. And at that point, you are definitely looking at it on a quarterly basis. But what I hear you say is also, this could come up any random week. This does not necessarily have to be part of the meeting pulse.
But what do you mean it's coming up on a quarterly basis? How?
So if you are preparing for a quarterly conversation, you're certainly people analyzing your direct reports, which requires you to go back and look at the accountability chart, at least to look at the seat that they're sitting in and evaluate them. And so, in that way, everything's being evaluated for GWC. You are also, while you're preparing for that quarterly conversation, evaluating them on the core values. But as you said, that perhaps we need to look at it more often. And I think part of what's hiding in that is when we set it for the very first time. And one of the rules that we give our teams in thinking about it is that it is a forward-facing exercise 6 to 12 months out. But then the question becomes, well, that's a moving window. So are you always looking 6 to 12 months out? Because we can't just do that once and then forget about it.
Yeah, I mean, but I feel like even in the way you were explaining it, you're like making my point, which is that you were talking about quarterly conversation, looking at it, thinking about the individual. I think that as leaders, I don't know, man. Maybe I just got to stick up my ass, but I'm trying not to make this semantic. What I'm saying is that like it's begging us to look at it as a problem-solving thing, not just from a, like whether or not the people are right, core values, or GWC the seat, but whether or not the seat in and of itself is right.
Oh, so we're coming back to the structure and greater
maybe
good of the organization.
Yeah, but also, sure, and that's all good, fine, like rah EOS, let's go. I'm talking about in the real world.
You're on one today, Clay. Let's have it,
man.
Just listen, what you gonna say, man.
In the real world, when you're kind of like managing a company, and so like maybe this is the litmus test. When you're finding it impossible to find someone who's gonna like be a right person, right seat in a seat consistently over and over again, like maybe it's not them, and maybe it's not you. Maybe it's the fucking seat. Excuse my language, Mom. I know my mom listens. Sorry, Mom. But you know what I'm saying? Like, please, like, be considerate that you might have been wrong in the accountability chart. For, of course, greater good and future oriented and all that shit that we teach. But also, you might just be wrong, and you need to fucking fix it. And all so, right. Like, and part of this is coming from like a few like client interactions that I've had, where like we're just like pounding our head against the wall because like we should be able to find a person. You can't find a person for that seat. Like at some point, you have to make the call that the seat is defined in a way that isn't realistic. You know what I'm saying?
Well, I was going to say, I started to really get the feeling that we were talking about a very specific encounter that you had with a client and the accountability chart here, you know, is certainly without giving away who they are. Let's dive deeper into that. What happened?
I wish it were just one. It's a handful of clients right now who are kind of like defining. One of them is a sales seat. Another one of them is a kind of an account management seat. And in both of them, from an outsider's perspective, from like kind of just like, if I'm just like analyzing the situation, they're replicating that one person that they had on the team who could do everything. And they're being like, that's what that seat is. And so, and you know, they've kind of had fits and starts of success and replace or adding a second one or whatever. But it just ain't working. And so they continue to GWC people out of the seat. But it's not the seat. It's not the person. It's the fucking seat doesn't work. And so like, there's just something and then you have to go back to the ground rules, the future oriented structure first, roles second. Sure. 100%. That's not my point. I agree with that. My point is that we aren't looking often enough to make sure that the problem isn't the people. The problem might be our work in creating the chart.
Heard.
With the caveat, I know I'm talking a lot. I'm sorry. With the caveat of where you started, which is that it changes over time. Like what's true today may not be true even 3 months from now. And so what do great leaders do when they get stuck? They figure out ways to structure the organization better. They figure out ways to simplify the organization better, get the right people doing the right work. And I'm doing, if this is my clarion call, podcast episode number, whatever the hell this is, like, go back to the accountability chart. We spend so much time on it at the beginning, and then we kind of, I know we go back to it when we talk, but I think most of the going back to it is from a people perspective. And I feel like we could be a little bit better as leaders and managers of entrepreneurial businesses, going back at it from a, we built this wrong, not because you did, but because it's good to question everything perspective. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. And, I'm getting to practice my listening skills on this particular episode of the pod. What I heard in that was, you mentioned that they had someone that was really good in the role. Now that person's not there anymore. They've put new people in the seat and they GWC them out of the seat because they're not qualified. But what I hear is that if we were to IDS that, the root of that issue is you still built that seat around a unicorn. You built it around a person and not necessarily the right structure of the business, but you thought about who you had. So you kind of broke a rule. You built it around that person. That person's very unique and special. You don't have them anymore. And now you're having problem filling it. And as you say, it's not about those people. Maybe the seat's wrong, and that seat is wrong in that particular case because it was built around someone who was very special. And now we actually do need to go back to the drawing board and say, okay, let's not think about that person, but rather, what does the business need? And also, is that realistic? And can we go out and find that person? So I'm agreeing with you in that, yeah, maybe it's just wrong.
End of episode. Cool. Yes,
I think
I feel like maybe they're like, this is where, this is why it's so hard to work with me, is coming out a little bit like in previous lives, because yes, but it's like, it's kind of like not just for the unicorn situations. I've also had the same experience where they a client overdefined a seat because they were trying to get a guy to quit. You know what I'm saying? Like, and so I think that we have these rules: structure first, people second, fire everybody, whatever. And that all works in focus day. Mm-hmm. And it works when we're checking in on it in VB1 and VB2, but then fucking real life happens. And like, you catch yourself doing these things. And I think the trigger is when repeatedly, if you ask yourself in the seat, is this actually someone I could hire? Or am I like, is this utopia? Like, I just want us to come back to that, because without the guardrails of the implementer in the room helping you with the accountability chart, this is the real world shit. The root of all, Walt says, the root of all evil the root of all dysfunction within any organization is coming from the accountability chart. And so we got to get good at that. And I just want to not bastardize it into only a right people, right seat, people analyzer exercise, but from is the accountability chart right? And you kind of always got to be. Anyway, I've completely hijacked this conversation, so my apologies.
No, this is good. And you and I both know, Clay, and it's something that our clients learn over time. We sort of talk about the matrix of EOS, or putting everything together. So when we first start to work with teams, all of the tools seem individual and siloed, if you will. Mm-hmm. And over time, they really start to connect to each other. And the accountability chart is one that, wow, is it rooted in, I think you and I have talked before off camera, certainly. And I have in my mind what I've started to refer to as sort of the advanced accountability chart, if you will. So, there's a way for you to be able to look at it, and then you should easily be able to also understand the specific processes that we documented, and just the person sitting in that seat, like, what all processes do they participate in? What are the key measurables that seat is accountable for keeping on track? So we can start to attach other things to it. Now, this is this is pure EOS stuff, but it is impure in the sense that we do not teach things like that. It's just in my mind, I connect things like that. And, one of the things that I hear you saying is that it is not just this thing of we're just going to define this seat, a major function, these roles. Let's make sure that we put someone in it. We're going to see if they GWC the seat. And that's all we use the accountability chart for. And that beyond that, there's never looking at it from the standpoint of, are these seats even right? Is this feasible? Is this still the right structure 6 to 9 months removed from the last time we really looked at it through that lens? Are we using it in other ways? You and I have also talked before about when we solve an issue and when we get to the root of it, if we really understand the root cause of it, it should be very quick for you to look on the accountability chart, look through the roles, and eventually find where that role is. And then whoever's sitting in that seat is the person that we would have leading the charge. But if you can't find that, then that may even likely be why you've got that issue, because no one's accountable for it, right? So there's all sorts of ways that we should be using this all of the time. And I think, to get us to a solve, if you will, right? Because I hear you loud and clear. For our listeners, what I've heard from you is that, I'll attach some other EOS tools to it. Are we taking clarity breaks and looking at that accountability chart through those different lenses occasionally? Taking a look and saying, well, now is this where I'm going in 6 to 12 months? Because I haven't thought about that in a while. Do I actually need to move these things around? Is that seat realistic, right? Is there anything really wrong with that person? As you say, certainly when we're involved, our organizations are succeeding, they are growing. And so inevitably, someone can't hold on to all of those roles. So do some of those roles need to go somewhere else? Do we need to define another seat? Like when we use the delegate and elevate tool, what does that tell us about the changes that need to be made to the accountability chart? So I believe what I'm hearing from you is that it's being used in a very myopic way.
Yeah, I think that's the thing, right? I want the accountability chart to not just be the thing that drives GWC on the people analyzer. I want our listeners to use the accountability chart as a tool. There is a reason it is the first tool we teach. The first tool we teach is not people analyzer. The first tool we teach is accountability chart. The 3 of the 5 leadership abilities that we talk about on Focus Day are about putting the right teams together in the right way to make decisions, getting the right people doing the right work in the most simple way possible. Like, this is the core, like the accountability chart work is core stuff. People analyzer is assessment stuff. And I just feel like it's a good reminder. Anyway, so
well, I think there's plenty of nuggets in there. Listeners, you might have to go digging for them today. Also, for what it's worth, I have a Focus Day starting with a new client tomorrow, so I am more than prepared to build a new accountability chart tomorrow with my new client. Take them home, Clay.
Awesome. Well, that's going to do it for this episode, everybody. I'm Clay. He's Josh. We're EOS implementers, and we love helping entrepreneurs build great businesses. Thanks for joining us today on All Tens. Please rate, but mainly please subscribe on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you listen to podcasts. And we'll see you next week. Bye, Josh.
Bye, Clay.